Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 158, recording on Tuesday, but publishing on Thursday, April 16th. The guest for you today is Paul Lambert. We call him Meatsauce in the business. He is a co-host of the Power Trip Morning Show on KFAN, one of the people I know who love the draft more than anybody else. So we're about a week away, and Sauce cares about this team that you guys also love. So I'm like, why not have him on? We did it last year, and I want to hear what he thinks, what he wants out of this draft, because I don't know. I love the perspective of those who care about the team and have kind of studied this stuff as well. So we talked about everything, played a little game of how would you feel if a couple things happened at the top of the draft and throughout the draft. So had a good time with it. Talked Thieneman, talked Sadiq, talked Caden McDonald, talked center. Was a great conversation with Sauce. If you're new here and watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. You can also hit the like. I think it helps with the video algorithmic situation that we try to, that helps out the show. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, you can rate and review and follow us, and we appreciate that as well. This show is presented by First Resource Bank. If you don't know about First Resource Bank, you really should. Their information is in the description below, but it's a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area that is growing at a rapid rate, and it's run by really good people. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, and Charlie Anderson. They care about this local community. They've grown up here. They go to Vikings games and care about this team as much as you guys do. And they have a bank with a great banking platform online that I've used since I moved up here, and I can't thank them enough for the help. So First Resource Bank, check them out. The show is also sponsored by Pro MN Athletics. You guys probably either have kids or know of friends who have kids who love football, who play quarterback, who are looking forward to playing in high school, who have visions and aspirations. And Pro MN Athletics, Pro MN, is run by some guys who really just wanted to lift the tide of football in Minnesota, specifically at the youth level. Kurt Graham have worked with Tanner Morgan, who played quarterback in Minnesota, and a bunch of his buddies who played college football. They know about the recruitment process. They know about development. They've worked, they've structured some 7-on-7 leagues, which are, they do it out of hope of development and growth for some of these young kids. And then it's become really community. Like they had a winter academy. They're going to have a spring academy where it's like 60 kids training, from for speed and strength perspective, but also a football skills perspective. So the information for those guys is in the description below, but their goal is to lift the tide of football at the youth levels in Minnesota, and I appreciate kind of the efforts they've put in that space. So again, their website and social media feeds are in the description. Let's not waste any more time. Here is Paul Lambert, aka Meatsauce, talking about the NFL draft, which will happen next week. All right, Sauce, welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good. We do this, or we've done this. I guess we did it last year. We're going to do it this year where I know you like the draft as much as probably anyone I know. So I'm like, and you're locked in with this team. So you're probably curious and interested and going to be fun to talk to on the subject. How much like mock draft reading are you doing right now?
Well, I do a lot of mock draft reading, Alec, and the other thing that I like to do, I got to put this here so I can use my hands so it's on my lap. The other thing that I like to do is all these like companies like Pro Football Focus and like ESPN and all these people have done like mock draft simulators. Those are my favorite because like it's not that realistic, and sometimes like you can get trades where you're like, well, there's no way that's happening in real life. But I do a lot of mock draft simulators. That's one of my favorite things to do. But yeah, I'm totally locked in. A lot of people have said this isn't that exciting of a draft, and I agree with them. Like last year, it was we all knew who the number one overall pick was going to be. It was going to be Cam Ward, and then we knew the prize was Travis Hunter. And then on draft day, we saw that trade with Jacksonville to move up from 5 to 2 with Cleveland, and now Cleveland has 2 first-round picks this year. Not to go down this path, but I think they regret that. I don't think they should have given up what they gave up for him. I think he's only can play one position. I think he realized that, but that's a completely different thing. My point is, though, there was always drama in last year's draft. And then everybody, mostly Mel Kiper, thought, well, Sanders is going 3rd overall or might even go 2nd overall. He can go to the 5th round, wasn't he picked like 144? So there was that kind of drama in it. There isn't a lot of drama in this, but I think it's great from a draft standpoint that we don't know who's going to go 2nd overall 9 days away from it, right? Like normally you can map out the first 3 or 4 picks and then go, okay, the draft starts at pick 5. Well, that's not the case. I couldn't tell you right now if it's going to be Arvell Reese, David Bailey, or some people think they might take Carnell Tate 2nd overall, right? So, like, I couldn't tell you who they're going to take. I just know that the top 10 is going to include a lot of Ohio State players.
And then you've got, I mean, you're exactly right. Then you've got, like, at 3, is Arizona, are they going to trade down? Would they do Jeremiah Love? They apparently want a quarterback because they don't really have one. So what kind of machinations are they going to do to potentially find whoever that may be, whether it's Ty Simpson or somebody else? And then over the course of this draft cycle, as you, I'm sure, have seen a ton, it's like Jeremiah Love. Is he going to go 4 to Tennessee? Is that too rich for Tennessee? Is he going to go to the Giant? Like Jeremiah Love feels like, for me at least, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, like probably the most interesting wild card other than maybe Caleb Downs and what happens with him. But like Jeremiah Love is, I think he's an exceptional talent. Will be a blast to watch in the NFL. But like that's the only, to your point, that's really like the only intrigue to me outside of, major intrigue outside of what happens at 2, and then does Ty Simpson go in the first round? That's really kind of it from the national landscape of things.
Well, and I think the other thing to your point too is Ben Lieber and I did a mock draft all the way up to pick 18 last week. You can find it on like the KFAN YouTube channel. But like Lieber's point was like, why would the Jets not take Jeremiah Love too? I know they have Breece Hall, but you see some of these really good offenses, Detroit, a 2-back system. I mean, they're that team. The Jets are a team that just needs, like, this is a wrong term, but like they need some sex appeal, right? They need a play. David Bailey and Arvell Reese might be the next Jared Allen, but you're not going to bring both of these players to the draft room and go, or the next day at the press conference and go, hey, we took Arvell Reese and we took Gerard McCoy. People go, okay, cool. The Jets defense is terrible. But why aren't they taking somebody like Jeremiah Love? And I think the intrigue with that is outstanding. And the other thing, Alec, is what do the Cowboys do? The Cowboys have 2 first-round picks. A lot of teams, I would guess, in this draft, unless you think you get a knockout star, we're not going to see a lot of 2027 first-round picks taken, because a year from now when we're doing this, that's a loaded class. I think PA said, or somebody said yesterday, there might be 12 quarterbacks in that draft, and 12 of them might go in the first 2 rounds, right? That's a loaded draft. My point, though, is like, why wouldn't the Jets just take Jeremiah Love? I also think the Cowboys might be a team with 12 and 20 that might move up into that range for somebody like that, because that's a Jerry Jones move, and Jeremiah Love is a perfect player for them. So there's a lot of intrigue. There isn't just a lot of like outstanding intrigue like we're used to.
Yeah, no, the funny thing about the Jets, to your point, is it's like, yes, you'd always prefer to take the pass rusher over the running back. But the argument in some cases is like, but if you're 40% confident that the edge rusher is going to hit, but you're 70% confident the running back's going to be a star, like, would it be more worth it of just doing the star running back situation? And I will also say, to kind of, validate your Cowboys point, I mean, when I talk to people around the league, it does feel like they are trying to hop up and do something. Like the Cowboys are lurking, whether
Yeah.
it is, I mean, they have a new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, comes from the Eagles, really, really smart. They need a ton of help on the back end. Is it Caleb Downs? Is it a Sonny Styles? Would they be willing to go that route at like 6 or 5 or something like that? It's gonna be pretty interesting. All right, we'll
I
go
mean, is
Vikings. Yeah, yeah.
the yeah, go ahead.
No, no, no. I'd
Well, my other
say,
thing I was going to say is it like with the Cowboys, are they a team that like they would take the best defensive end that doesn't go at 2, right? I don't know if you move all the way up to 3. I mean, the Will Anderson Jr. a few years ago when the Texans made those moves to get all the way
yeah.
back up to 3 after they took C.J. Stroud. I don't know if there's a Will Anderson Jr. in this draft, but yes, to your point, the Cowboys are a team that's lurking.
Yeah, I mean, you could even have like the Cowboys lost Micah Parsons. If Arvell Reese is available as a guy who can play off the ball, who can play on the edge, like he would
Yeah.
be kind of I mean, you're thinking about Christian Parker coming from the Eagles, like a Zach Bond type of chess piece in some ways. That would be pretty interesting. All right, we're gonna with the Viking stuff, we're gonna play a game here. I came up with this right on the top. It's probably not the most creative thing, probably wouldn't fly on Power Trip, but it's what I've got for you. So I'm going to go, how would you feel if, and I'm going to give you some scenarios and we'll just go one by one and I'm just going to get your thoughts. So
Okay.
we'll start with chalk. How would you feel if the Vikings took Dylan Thieneman, the Oregon safety, who has been mocked as frequently as any prospect in the first round besides Fernando Mendoza at 1, to the Minnesota Vikings? How would you feel if the Vikings take Dylan Thieneman at 18?
Um, I would be fine with it because that's a piece they need, but that is also a very boring name. And I think it's boring because it's been mocked so much to them. That would be a pick where I think like I'd be excited. I'd probably get into it later. I think he'll be a good player. But I also think as this gets closer, I think he'll be gone when the Vikings pick at 18. I think a team I think the Vikings are selling the idea of Dylan Thieneman. So a team like a Carolina who needs a safety might jump up one pick in front of them. There's so many, as Charch said a couple weeks back on PA Show, there's so many teams that need safety. And I think that after Caleb Downs, that Dylan Thieneman is the right guy. But I'd be fine with it, of course. But I think there's a little bit. I'm a little bit bored with it because it's any mock draft you go to, even if it's like SteveFootball.com, that's the guy they have going at 18. So I would be fine with it, but I'm kind of bored with it.
I'll say a couple things on him. So, I mean, because it's been mocked as much as it has. Like I've talked to obviously people internally, with people in the industry who evaluate for other teams. And like I will say, the people I talk to love him. I mean, they love the character that he has. They love the smarts, and then they love the athleticism and the range. Like I've had people say to me that like they don't think it's that much of a dissonance between Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman, which I found pretty interesting just because of the optics
Wow.
of him. I would say you're exactly right. Like there are a lot of teams lurking for safeties. Carolina is definitely one of them. Dallas is going to be another one. So I mean, you almost wonder what if Dallas traded up somehow and then also, they took Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs or something. Like, what if that were possible? That would be pretty fascinating getting guys from the same team. But I think
Yeah.
I'm going to have a hard time when I do my final mock draft next Monday picking Dylan Thieneman just because until I hear the smoke from internal, like it just feels like it's way too convenient for everybody to see the safety as a
Yes.
need and then just throw the guy who looks and sounds like Harrison Smith in that spot. Just kind of how I feel about it, for better or
Correct.
worse.
I agree 100%.
All right, next we're going to go next spot. So, how would you feel if the Vikings landed Kenyon Sadiq at 18, the tight end from Oregon?
I think it would be outstanding. That would be my favorite pick. I think you'd have to get him by the Ravens at 14. I think Kenyon Sadiq is also a name where if they're serious about running, because TJ Hawkinson will be gone next year, and if you can get a cheap piece to play that position that this offense seems to need, even though TJ Hawkinson has been hurt, but when he's healthy, he's played pretty good. I think that is a name that if he got to like 13, you could probably package 18 and maybe 97 or the other third round pick you have and move up. I think when you get past the top 10, unless you're coming back into the first round, I don't think you need to attach a first round pick. You can attach a Vikings first round pick in 2027 because of the need. They might need a quarterback. So Kenyon Sadiq would be the number one name on my board. And Lieber, who is on our podcast, the Power Trip podcast, and other places, has given such a great breakdown of how good he'd be in like 12 personnel. He's just an offensive weapon. Kenyon Sadiq would be my favorite pick. And I think if they were both on the board, Kenyon Sadiq would be the guy they'd take.
Like he would be such a fun player in this offense because you could line him up in the backfield and have him block from the backfield, kind of like quasi fullback, but he has the athleticism to really be dynamic. I also say, you know this, Kyler Murray has had so much success throwing to Trey McBride over the years. And so the idea of an athletic and explosive underneath tight end to pair with him come the fall would be pretty interesting. That one would be, to your point, like it would be extremely fun to see how they would use a guy like that. So the more I've gone down that road from a thought perspective. Now, what would be interesting, two things from what you said would be interesting. One, like how drafting him at 18 would probably change the course of the rest of the draft. Then you're probably not looking at a receiver at 49, or so you're probably thinking about him as like a TE plus kind of bigger bodied receiver. So that would kind of change how day two goes. And then the idea of a trade up is interesting. Like I would say the other guy, like if Caleb Downs somehow fell to 11, 12, it would probably be, if you could trade a third and a fifth and get up there, that'd be pretty enticing and pretty intriguing. But I don't know about you, but like I don't love the idea of them trading a bunch of draft capital to move up, knowing how much they're going to need these picks to get younger across the roster.
Well, I think if Caleb Downs gets to 11, you'd have to find a way, because he's not getting past the Cowboys at 12. And it would be weird if the Cowboys saw Caleb fall down the board and they just sat and stayed with the picks they have from some of the trades they've made. But I think to your point, though, because what you have to get out of this draft is you have to get a center. And the best center in the draft, in my opinion, I'm basically just stealing it from your guy who wrote The Beast, which is outstanding for draft people like me on The Athletic and theathletic.com, is Jake Slaughter. I think Jake Slaughter could be the pick at 49 because they have to get that position right. Garrett Bradbury was fine. We saw him in the Super Bowl. He was terrible, right? Like, you have to get, and the Ryan Kelly thing was a good idea, but the health just wasn't there. So pick 49, I think you would have to take a center, and you need a defensive tackle out of this. But if you could get your hands on Caleb, and maybe you had to give up your 2 second-round pick or your 2 third-round picks to go from 18 to 11. I don't have the Jimmy Johnson point sheet here, but then 49, you either move back and maybe you like the Kansas State center, but then you could use 49 to accrue more picks in the draft and move your way down and then just settle somewhere. But you have to have a center. And the best one is Jake Slaughter. So if it's Caleb Downs is probably the only guy I'd trade up high for. But if Sadiq's at 13, he's not going to get past the Ravens at 14. So if you could trade 18 and 97 and maybe like a 5th or 4th round pick in next year's draft, if a team would take next year collateral because those picks are going to be worth more, then I would do it.
The center one is interesting because, and it's funny. Like we were talking, I was watching Jake Slaughter yesterday, and I was talking to a scout in the AFC yesterday about Sam Hecht versus Logan Jones, the Iowa center, and what the preference is there, and why
Yeah,
he would prefer one or the other. And like, I guess it's interesting because they're all clumped together, like the Connor Lew from Auburn, and they're all kind
from
of
Auburn. Yeah,
borderline. They're all like borderline starter players. None of them are like viewed as elite guys, and so I would wonder if instead of using one of your premium picks there, could you just wait to see who's left and then find your guy there? I don't know if I love that because then you're leaning heavily on Blake Brandel, but I also like I like Jake Slaughter. I really do. He's a bigger body guy. He can process the field well. He's really smart. But with the way they want
he's
to revamp their
huge.
run game, like do they want a smaller, quicker, more explosive guy? Like I think that's a question that the draft will flesh out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't, even when you talk about trading those third round picks, like I don't love, every time I hear that, and I even, Caleb Downs and this defense would just be otherworldly, but like I cringe a little bit at the idea of trading those third rounders, knowing they need to come away with a bunch of starters. All right, next one. How would you feel if, let's say, the Vikings in the first round traded back 6 spots and drafted Caden McDonald, the defensive tackle from Ohio State?
I love that take because I think that's a name that we will be talking about as this gets closer. When I say closer, it's only 9 days away. But to your point, and I love the way you put that, Caden McDonald is a guy you could move back for. So I think the Bears pick at like 26 or 27. That's a team you could move back with. That's a team where, like, I think you wish in this scenario, another scenario that I wish was happening, I wish the Jets picked 18 and we picked 17 because you could sell to one of these teams that they are going to take Ty Simpson. Not, and I don't know if you could get like an Atlanta and LA bit where you could get somebody to move all the way back up. Excuse me, I got this horrible cold. If you could move all the way back up, but I do like that because Cade McDonald isn't a guy you could take at 18. I think he's more of a two down player. But if you could move back from 18 to say 26 and get another third round pick or maybe a late second round pick, I think you do it. Cade McDonald is definitely in play. And I think he'd be a piece that you need because the two defensive tackles you brought in last year are no longer on the team.
I mean, the other thing about like the trade back, and I'm always a fan of trade back because I think the more darts you have to throw, the more likely you are to hit. But if you trade back and you get a third round pick or a second round pick, then and you got a defensive tackle like Caden McDonald, who yes is a nose tackle, but you know this, like offenses are getting bigger and heavier and running the football more, so the ability to defend that's going to be important. But if you have another dart to throw in that round 2, round 3 range, then you can rattle off receiver, running back, center,
Yeah.
like DB. You can get
Corner.
potential starter, like yeah, corner. Like you could get 4 potential starter types plus the defensive tackle who is going to rise to a certain floor. Like that, it would be really intriguing and enticing, I think, to be able to go that type of route. So, I mean, again, you got to find a team that's going to be willing to trade up. You got to get the amount of draft capital, and you got to be comfortable with Caden McDonald and his upside. So it's a lot of boxes to check, but it's hard for me not to be intrigued by that as a possibility, and it sounds like you are as well.
Yeah, I would be all in for that. But as we've seen though in the past, Alec, is you can't get too cute, right? You have to, and they know. I'm not saying they don't, but you
Right.
have to know the defensive tackle teams in front of you, right? If you go back and you can't be in no man's land, right? And then all of a sudden, that's kind of what happened in Kwesi's first draft. They were in no man's land, right? They went way too far back. They passed on two generational talents in Jameson Williams and Kyle Hamilton, and that backfired, and then that set the franchise back. We could go through that a little bit, but you got to be able to not get into no man's land, or you have to have on your board like 3 or 4 options, and that I like the trade back for Cade McDonald.
Yeah, I think the point you just made is the exact one. If you are going to trade back, you have to be okay with if Caden McDonald's not there, if Dylan Thieneman's not there, you got to have five probably outs of if this were to happen, we'll go this route and be really comfortable with it. And maybe, I mean, again, like maybe you trade back and then, I mean, like a guy that I've heard a lot of buzz about is Traden Stukes, the nickel slash safety from Arizona. Guy, he's really like,
Oh
not
yeah,
risen. He's not risen because that doesn't really exist. Like the rising is just in the public sphere, whereas scouts have always viewed these guys at a certain spot. But like I think you would have to feel really good about your outs, whether it's Chris Johnson, the DB from San Diego State. Like there are a lot of guys, if you were to trade back to like a 27
Colton
or
Hood.
something, Colton Hood, like that, yeah, there's guys you would have to feel comfortable with. All right. That'll end the game of how do you feel
Yeah.
if. Like, what else do you want, Sauce, out of this draft for the Vikings? I mean, we've talked about center and Jake Slaughter. We've talked about like first, some of the options at the first round. What else do you personally like will satisfy you as wrap it all up on Monday morning after watching what plays out over the weekend?
Well, I think this team needs an offensive weapon. I don't care where you get it in your first four picks, because as we've talked about on the power trip, the wide receivers after Addison and Jefferson are not good. That doesn't mean they're bad people. They're just not very good. So you have that. You have to get a center because you didn't attack that at all in free agency. And this draft has probably four really good ones, and then it's just kind of a crapshoot after that. That would be great. I would the cornerback. I know you wrote about it that you don't know if they'll take a corner with the first pick, unless like if Gerard McCoy is at 18, you have to take him. He's that dynamic of a player. Mansour Delane is going to be a top 7 pick, but I think a corner. You have to find a safety somewhere, and the kid from Toledo I think is good, but I don't know enough about him. You have to find, I would be thrilled with some kind of offensive weapon at pick 18 and then a center. And whatever else after that has to be a defensive tackle of some sort. You could always use an edge player. Keldrick Falk, I don't think is a name at 18 that might be around. Lieber likes him. He plays all over he plays all over the defensive line. But that is one of those names. If you move back and he's sitting there at 18, to your question though, it's got to be in this order. It's got to be, not in particular order. Safety, center, wide receiver, corner, and some kind of defensive line help. And you don't have a fourth round pick, which sucks because guys in the top 150 are valuable players, but you just got to hit on them. I think also to answer your question is they have to work. Like we have to have people that contribute right away. We can't have guys that are like, yeah, they're working him in. The Lewis Seam thing. He just wasn't good and they knew it the second they got it. He couldn't beat out some of these guys and they said, well, he's a backup. Dallas Turner, I think, will have more of an impact on this team. I think the Jonathan Grenard trade is something that can come up on draft weekend, especially if these teams miss out on David Bailey or Arvell Reese. So like there are moves to be made, but they definitely need a starting center. They definitely need more defensive tackle help, and they definitely need either a tight end or wide receiver and a safety. Whatever order that is, I'll be totally fine with.
I'm with you on a lot of that. I will say this. I was texting with an agent who knows Rob really well and has for a long time. He said he will prioritize college production. And I would say if you
Yeah.
look at any of the studies that have been done about like draft success, it's actually college production. That's why the tape is so valuable, is the most predictive, unsurprisingly, data point, more than 40-yard dash, more than vertical leap, all that stuff to guys who succeed. So I thought that was interesting. But I'm like just from a like I wouldn't consider myself a fan, but just from the viewer standpoint, it's like if you can get speed on the back end and across the defense, like just speed to be able to close space quicker than they have. If you can get a defensive lineman who is, plays violently on the front, if you can get, to your point, an offensive weapon and then somewhat of pass catcher depth, however you are acquiring that, and you leave this draft with three guys who are solid core players for your foreseeable future, I think you come away feeling very, very good about that. But I think like the center, I'm really curious from a who they target and from a safety perspective because of what the positional versatility they love, the center perspective because of how they want to revamp their run game with some of the outside zone strategy, and then from a receiver's perspective, they have not had a big bodied guy really since Kevin O'Connell got here. KJ Osborne, I guess, somewhat qualifies, but being able to find that type of guy would be interesting as well. So it's going to be like, I don't know how you feel as from a Viking specific standpoint. Like, this is as intriguing for me as maybe I've had since I've been here, just because of the amount of outs they potentially have at all spots and having 4 picks in the top 100. So I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't see how it all goes down. It'll be great on Saturday or Friday because they, as of right now, have 3 picks. The intrigue on that will be great. 49. If you get out of the first round and you have 49 in both of your second or both of your third round picks, that also gives you ammo if you want. If somebody is there in like the 40s, that gives you ammo to move up a little. If somebody's there in the mid 30s that you really like, you can move up doing that. So if they can leave with pick 18 intact and then they have the ammo with, the 3 picks they have on Friday, you can go about anywhere in that draft, forward or backward. So it's going to be elite.
Yeah. Can't wait for it. We're going to be, we're doing a mock draft on KFAN. Is that right? What's the deal for people
Yeah, the
listening and
power trip.
watching?
We
Okay.
we do a power trip mock draft. They've done one, I think, for the 25 years they've been a show. I think they've done one. I asked them today. I think it's 24. You will be involved. Dave Sinekin will be involved. The voice of the Vikings will be involved. Nordo, Charch, Parker Fox will be there. Lieber will be there. It's super fun. It'll be a great time. It's 7 to 9 a.m. a week. It'll be on draft day, so it'll be great.
All right, looking forward to it. I'll probably get the last pick, and then that means next year I should get the first pick. Then a coin flip, I'll lose it,
That's
just
the
like the
golf bet.
Masters bet.
That's something
And then
different.
yeah. And I mean, I can't wait until the PGA Championship when I'm picking last and I'm ending up with Jordan Spieth again. It's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, Kevin Gore will probably win. Sauce, thanks for hopping on.
Correct.
Always fun. We will.
Yeah, brother.
We'll be texting over the next 10 days, probably see what happens. Should be exciting.
Appreciate you.
And that'll do it for episode 158 of the Alec Lewis Show. Appreciate Paul Lambert, who we call Meatsauce in the business, for hopping on the show. Cannot thank him enough for taking the time, and was a lot of good perspective. And I think it lays a lot of the groundwork for what to expect. I am actually going to have my final mock draft run Monday at The Athletic and theathletic.com. So stay tuned for that. And then we will have comprehensive coverage throughout next week into next weekend on a daily basis of players taken, of players to expect on day 2 and day 3, of prospect fits. I mean, it's anything and everything you want. We will have it over at theathletic.com. So check that out. This show is presented by First Resource Bank. It's sponsored by ProMN, a company here locally that hopes to and really has lifted the tide of development for football at the youth levels in Minnesota with kids who really want to improve from a skill perspective and learn and athleticism perspective and understand the recruiting process and learn from guys who have been in the, walk their shoes, like a Tanner Morgan and some of his buddies. So whether your kids are quarterbacks or at other positions or have friends who have kids who love football, please check out ProMN. Show sponsored by Unreal, locally owned clothing brand. And you can find it anywhere you get your podcasts: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iHeart. We cannot thank you guys enough for paying attention and spending your time listening and watching. And with that, enjoy your weekend, and we will talk to you very, very soon.